candidate Trump was elected as an agent of change. Right or wrong, I think that's the fundamental tenet of what got him elected. And from the at least opening weeks of President Trump's administration, you are seeing that play through. And I would expect that to continue down the line as we get into financial services reform. Let me pick on my first 3 points. Let me start with the opportunities. 20 years ago, I had the honor and privilege of working here in Toronto as a partner with McKinsey & Company for the task force looking at the future of Canadian financial services. I was a partner of McKinsey & Company at the time. I had a chance to work with some great people here, names that may be familiar to some of you, Harold McKay, Fred Corbett, Mike Andrews, and then my McKinsey colleague, Dominic Barton, who now runs McKinsey globally. That was an opportunity that you have every 5 years under your banking laws here to do a very thoughtful, comprehensive, inclusive, deliberate, you can fill in more adjectives there, but it was a very worthwhile effort to go through, just to step back and pause and look at the impact of Canadian banking laws. In our case, McKinsey was asked to look at were Canadian financial institutions competitive in this growing global economy, and were Canadian customers well served by the institutions here. Again, very thoughtful, deliberative process. If you're looking for that in the U.S., let me disavow you of that kind of thoughtful, deliberative process. Ours will be much messier. It will be hopefully thoughtful at points along the way, but it will be a very different process, driven in part by the current political environment, driven in part by the pent-up demand, certainly in both houses of the Republican Congress, the House and the Senate, who have been advocating for reforms to Dodd-Frank to go back and revisit some of the elements there. For some period of years, they've been passing legislation, and they're ready to move, and I'll come back to that in a second. So there is an opportunity, I think, for those people, forget about repeal Dodd-Frank and some of the campaign statements. The other statement we'll probably get into was we want to reinstate Glass-Steagall. Well, I'm very sorry, but the Glass-Steagall still exists in our country, and we can talk about the elements of that. But there will be an opportunity. It will start this month in the House Financial Services Committee as they hold hearings and move to markup on the Choice Act that John mentioned as the first piece of legislation that will start moving. Second piece I want to talk about are the presidential appointments. To date, we've only seen the Treasury Secretary designee who's going through the confirmation process now. I would expect the Senate to pick up and move his confirmation in the next several days, next week at the very latest. From that point forward, the other sub-cabinet positions at Treasury are going to be critical, as are all the appointments at the various financial regulatory agencies, Comptroller of the Currency, FDIC, Federal Reserve, and others. The President has something like 28 appointments to make over the course of the next year or so, including appointments to important roles at the Federal Reserve. We have 2 open slots at the Federal Reserve that have been vacancies for some time, including a very critical role for Vice Chairman of Supervision, a role that President Obama never filled in his tenure as President. So very important appointments coming up. I can tell you from talking to people in the transition team that I've talked to, from some of the names being floated around, including some former colleagues and friends and professional acquaintances of mine, this is a group of people who, if confirmed and it follows through, are seasoned, they're professional, they're experienced. Most of them have experienced government work before, so they've been in both the public sector and private sector, and I think you'll see some good people appointed there.